Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today our special guest is Jon Cohn. He's the author of Stuff That People Might Want to Know. It's a series of lighthearted observations, opinions, and short essays. You might know him as a contributing columnist for the Glenview Lantern. Glad to have you here, Jon.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me here.
So how long have you been writing for the Glenview Lantern?
Well, for the Glenview Lantern, it's probably been a little over 2 years. It kind of started out where I just contacted the editor. I think his name was Alex Meister back then, just off the cuff. And I asked him, can I write, I've worked for the Park District and done some sports programs in Glenview, can I write up one column? And I wrote one, and after one, there was another one, and it kind of led into it. Never was officially a regular thing, but it's become kind of a weekly thing, and I enjoy it. Usually it's in the sports page, and it's called Coach Talk.
Yes, and I see why, because you've been an active community coach for how long now?
Well, coaching since I was 16 years old.
Yes.
And I remember, getting cut from the high school basketball team, which was like the worst thing that happened to me, and I was in deep depression for about 2 weeks, and after that I still remember, and this was in Winnetka where I grew up, not in Glenview, but I called up the local Park District as a high school kid and ended up coaching a kids basketball team.
Wow.
And I enjoyed that, and from that I ended up coaching a Little League team. Again, I was only 16 years old, and I remember we won the championship, which I thought was the greatest thing in the world.
But that's a great comeback story.
And I'm 59 years old now, so 26, 36, 40, so 43 years later, I'm still coaching, and I still love it.
Well, I can see why you do. And you coach for softball and basketball, mainly?
At the high school level, I've coached softball and basketball, Loyola Academy, North Shore, Country Day, Highland Park, some different high schools. But in the community here in Glenview, I've done soccer, volleyball, many years with Glenview Youth Baseball, so lots of different sports.
And you also are an announcer, right, for Comcast High School Game of the Week?
Yep, I was lucky enough to get involved with that, and that's probably been over 15 years. I'm doing it a little bit less now than I used to, but for the local Comcast, CN100, I do the high school game of the week, basketball, football. We just did a soccer game, so it's something I've always enjoyed doing. I love high school sports.
I'm sure that some of our viewers recognize your voice. It's a very strong radio voice. So tell us a little bit about your book. It's newly released. And how long did you prepare for this book? And it does seem like a nice collection of thoughts and observations, but not sports related.
Well, that's the first thing to mention with our the preview of everything sports related. I surprise people when it's not a book about sport. There's a couple of things in there, but it is not a sports book. So I probably started thinking about it. Really, the whole journalism bug did not hit me till about 3 years ago. I wrote a few things, but never really got into it. But between the Glenview Lantern and I did some writing for a little Chicago newspaper, I kind of started getting the journalism bug. And just as a sidelight, it was very interesting that I found, how you get the adrenaline high from sports, from playing it, from coaching it. Yeah. From watching it, there's that emotion. I've found maybe not quite to the same level, but through writing, you still get some of that same high, some of that same adrenaline kick, which I was quite frankly surprised about.
Yes.
But you try to create a column and you come up with a good one, and you do get some of those sports juices, if you will, going. But so it's been a little over 2 years, and but the book, just came out, and but it was probably a couple of years for me to start writing down the ideas and get everything together. When I decided to go ahead and get it published, it was probably a little bit over a 1 year process.
And it's available on Amazon, right?
Amazon.com, definitely. That's the most common way to get it. It is also now at the Bookmart in the Glen, and also at the Book Bin in Northbrook. Hoping to get it in a few more stores. I know the Chestnut Bookstore in Winnetka, hopefully, and the Barnes & Nobles, but we're still working on that.
But you've been a coach as a persona, right? Even in a radio show, you say, right? Another one.
Yeah, that's why I'm the book it says Jon Coach Cohn, and really the coach, it's not just from coaching sports, really the coach moniker took off from the Comcast TV, but even more so, I used to do a radio show, a couple different ones. And they wouldn't call me John, Coach was the name on the radio show. So Coach kind of stuck, and that's kind of been the nickname / moniker.
What kind of a radio show was it? Is it a comedy or is it
Sports
commentary,
sports,
perhaps?
but we would, the best way you could describe it, we were not hardcore sports. We would jump off the sports page and get into other topics, similar to the book here, early and often. So sports was kind of the center theme, but it was not hardcore. Sports / entertainment, if you want to call it that.
Was it a local station?
Let's see, we did a show out of Arlington Heights called The Naked Truth About Sports. This is a long time ago. That station has since closed down. Obviously, our show wasn't that great of a success. Did a show on WSBC called The Morning Break. For a brief time, I was on The Score, which is like the major sports station in Chicago, doing Saturday night overnights. Start at 2:30 in the morning, and we go to 6:30. So we got some interesting callers doing those 4 hours.
Must be.
And then most recently, I did an internet show out of Morton Grove. It was called Two Guys and a Mic.
Really? There's internet, I mean, streaming radio, is it?
Yeah. More and more popular now are, shows. You can do a lot of different topical shows, radio shows, if you want to call that, over the internet.
But it's still streaming. It's not a podcast, is it? Because a podcast, they
different than podcasts.
Replay it.
Yeah, it was over. You could get it over the internet, and I think the people that ran it was called Talk Zone. Mm-hmm. So from this particular company was called Talk Zone, and they ran a bunch of different radio shows. Oh. So it was through their site that we had the show.
How interesting.
Two Guys and a Mic.
So you like to continue that, or?
Oh, I love the radio.
Yeah.
Loved it, but very hard to make money. Very hard to keep moving up, especially at my withering age here. It's the young kids are all coming in, but I thoroughly love doing it.
Oh, that's nice to hear about that. Well, tell us a little bit about your short essays and opinions pieces.
So the book's called Stuff People Might Want to Know, and then the subtitle is from someone who really shouldn't be writing a book.
Why is that?
So I try to put some light humor into it. And why did I put that in there? Probably because I'm thinking back to my English teachers along the way. I was never my top subject. And I kid in there that if they found out I was actually writing a book, they'd probably, be having some kind of negative thoughts, to say the least. But
well, I think that's exactly the kind of teachers would be proud of, that you pursued the writing, because the one you least expected to, and
right.
did something so.
So maybe shocked first and proud second. Yeah, and I have a whole part in there on spelling and grammar. I don't know if you read that part, but that was like always one of my things. When writing, I always semi-enjoyed writing. But I thought at the young ages, and I include this in the book here, and I try to put a little humor to it, but so many teachers are so concerned about the spelling and the grammar that, to me, and just me personally, the important thing is getting your thoughts down, creative thoughts, and getting the ideas across. And I didn't want to be bothered by how much you indent here. Should this be a colon or a semicolon? And sometimes I think with our young, I think the teaching is getting better than when I was young, but there's still, to me, too much worry about technical grammar and punctuation and not enough emphasis on the creative writing process.
I think your teachers will be very surprised how brave you are, right, to step out of those.
I remember I had teachers who used to, one word misspelled, grade off.
Yes.
For every word misspelled.
Yes.
So you could write a very nice paper, well thought out and stuff, and 2 misspelled words, you get a C.
Yeah.
And then somebody else could maybe not put as much time into it, not as creatively written, but all their punctuation is perfect and they get an A. And I never thought that was fair.
No.
That's why I wrote the book. Now, if I could only find my teacher's home addresses, I'd send them all a copy.
Well, it's certainly a good way to look at it. I am a part-time Mandarin teacher now at Glenview South, and I don't see how we can expect students to remember every stroke, on
Yeah.
a Chinese character. That takes just many, many years of practice. You have to have more contact with the language than 4 years of high school. You just really need to, and you have to have 24-hour contact with Chinese to know that. So I certainly don't see that as a must. This
I have a section in there, and again, it's all done with a touch of humor and tongue in cheek, but I also put in the description of the book at the ... with a few serious thoughts thrown in just for laughs. So I do try to, and I basically set up a whole different way of revising the entire school day. Not the school system, but just a whole different way to set up the entire school day. Too much to get into now, but I still think there's some changes there. And I also bring up college.
Yes,
In the
I saw
whole
that.
college process. I don't know if
Yes,
you read that part or
I
not.
did.
And I probably go a little bit too hard on it. And again, I try to keep a little sense of humor about it. But I do think us living in Glenview here and New Trier and Stevens and most of the suburban schools.
Yes.
And I experience this with my kids is, everybody is tracked.
It's a very serious topic here.
Yeah, but
nothing
right
to
from the beginning of high school, it's grades, it's SATs, it's ACTs, it's send out your applications, do your resumes, go visit the college, boom, 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 you're on the track. And I don't think the Glenview South, our local schools are tremendous schools, and they have guidance counselors and great college prep. But I do think there's a weakness. There's a lot of kids that college is not for them. And I think too much in our suburban schools, not just Glenview South, all of them. I think everybody's tracked here, and they're not asked often enough, is this really a kid where, is college best for them? Maybe they should do this first. And I get into that a little bit in the book too.
Yes. Well, in our neighborhood, there's actually a college, I think she's an application advisor. They just specialize in helping your...
Don't let her read the book. Don't give my name on it. I cover my name up if she reads that.
So you have children in college now, both of them.
Yeah, so I've just recently experienced, because they're in college now. And it's still a lot of the same things as when I went to school. And again, there's many, many positives. Obviously, overall, it's great. I'm not discouraging, but I think there's so many things that parents and kids first time going through it don't realize. A lot of times the first year, you're taking classes that are repeats of some of the, especially if you're going to good suburban schools like we have here. So you're paying $30,000 a year in the first year, first 2 years. Not all, but some of your classes are repeats of what we're being taught here. And I don't think kids know that coming in. Some of the teachers, your first year or two, are not professionally trained teachers. They're teachers' assistants. Or, they might be graduate assistants. So they might know the subject and they're trained in the subject, but it's not like they're professional teachers. Some of them may be good, some of them may not be good. But again, you're paying $30,000 or whatever, large amounts for college. And I don't know how many parents going into it the first time know that those first couple of years, you're not necessarily getting top-notch professional teachers. In most of the cases, you're not. You're getting graduate assistants or teachers professionals, and you can go one step further in junior and senior year when you start getting into the meat and potatoes. A lot of times you'll get some great professors, sometimes not so great, but in most of the universities, those professors are paid and they move up in rank, not based on how good a teacher's there.
Oh, that's...
It's based on the research
right.
they do.
That's true for all universities.
Yeah.
They're evaluated by how they research, how much they produce work, but then they may not be interested in teaching 19-year-olds at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So teaching might not be their top priority. Well, I'm paying $30,000 for my kid to go to school, and I've got a teacher who's concentrating on his research instead of his teaching. Again, it's going a little bit hard, but those are some of the things I bring up, and I do try to put some humor to it. But
yes, but that's a system that we cannot change because that's a university way of selection, right? They select their professors based on research.
It's never in my nature to
ability.
say we can't change.
Oh.
I'm always of the philosophy that if you take the approach like politics, and we get into that in the book too, if you take the approach, that's the way it is, that's the way it's always going to be, then that's the way it always will be. My personal philosophy is you need to address it and at least question it and bring it to the forefront in hopes of changing.
Well, that's a very good message.
That might be book number 2.
Yes, I think that's another book there. It sounds like another book's coming.
But we also do bring a lot of light topics too. So I touch on religion and politics, but I mean most of it.
Light topics, religion,
No, those
politics.
are the. But most of it is just little mini observations and mini opinions I've come up with over many, many years. Things I've just jotted down that I decided to put it on the book. Everything from why is there so much frosting now on kids' birthday cakes? I have a segment called Close Encounters of a Shoe Kind, which is based on something we did on the radio show, which a buddy of mine, who was my radio partner, used to sell shoes at a high-end shoe store, and how you can tell so much about the character of a person by how they treat service personnel, in this case, a shoe salesman.
Oh, yes.
And he used to deal with a lot of celebrities and stuff, and it's an interesting window into the character of people and how they...
Different perspective, different
Yeah.
interactions, and you find out their true character.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's true.
And
That's very
all
interesting.
kinds of inane, weird little topics like wedding. I think the title of the segment is called Shedding the Wedding Expenses, how the whole wedding industry
Oh,
has gone from, you start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you start with the wedding planner, and all of a sudden you've spent 6 times more than your budget. So we kind of take a humorous look at the whole wedding industry and how it's gotten maybe a little out of control. But so most of the book
is that coming up
light
for
topics.
you, your children too? Or
What's that?
is that coming up for your children too? Wedding
No.
plans? Not yet. Oh
Not
gosh.
yet, not yet, please.
No
A little
rush.
bit early for that.
Well, you've been a long-term resident at Glenview, in Glenview. Sorry.
Yep. 20 years where I'm currently living, and then 25 altogether. My first job right out of school was with the Glenview Park District.
Oh,
So,
so
I know Bob Quill and Cheryl Diam. I don't know if you know them or not, but they were at the Park District for many, many years and just retired. And I started the same time as Bob Quill, who just retired. I lasted 6 years. He lasted about 36 years, so he beat me by 30 years. But that was my first thought. Even when I was not living in Glenview, my first job out of school was at the Glenview Park District.
in Park District, what do you think about our Park District? I mean, I like the variety of programs they offer,
Outstanding.
right?
I think our Park District, I'm probably a little biased because I still work for them part-time, but I think the Glenview Park District is, from the recreation programs to the facilities in the parks, phenomenal.
Have their rules always been the same, that all children play, and all these principles about
I think
fairness, I guess.
it's interesting. Right when I started was when the youth sports was
growing?
at that,
Yeah,
well, not only growing, but that over-competitive.
I see. So
It was just starting to be addressed back then. And the coaching training programs and parent training programs prior to that were not there. So there was a lot of over-competitiveness, shall we say.
really, you mean
So
it was more competitive, even more so before? I don't understand. What time are you talking about?
It was in the sense that parents and coaches were not trained on it like they are now. It wasn't addressed.
Oh,
so
I
it was
see.
kind of a new frontier. Now, where you're alluding to now, because of the year-round programs, the club programs, the number of outside the park district
Correct. Yes, there's
specialty
a lot
programs.
more.
So you're correct. Now,
I didn't know
that
was.
from when I started the park district, there was hardly any of those extra
I
programs.
see.
And now, in Glenview alone, there's probably 6 or 7 different baseball specialty facilities. So in that sense, yes, it's gotten a lot more serious, a lot more specialized.
So Glenview, for the Park District, has always offered so many sports? I mean, or have they developed that? Because I'm very impressed with my children could start playing basketball at kindergarten, first grade, second grade. So has it always been?
Best way I can describe it, the answer is no. And the best way I can describe it is when I started, the Park District brochure was about 8 pages.
Yes, yes.
And now you get it
A
4
book,
times
yeah.
a year, and it's about 40 pages.
Yes.
So there's tenfold more programs now than there used to be. There's an offering literally for just about any interest.
So, and what age do you feel children or students are interested themselves in competitive sports?
I think we've
because
we've gone a little young. And I think I know from baseball and soccer, our AYSO soccer and Glenview Youth Baseball, both beautifully run organizations. But I think what happened is, they compete a little bit. So baseball started at 8 years old maybe, and soccer started at 9. Well, all of a sudden soccer offered it to 7-year-olds.
Yes.
So a lot of kids were getting into soccer early. Well, baseball was worried about that, so baseball went down to 6 years old.
I see.
And I don't know if I have the exact chronological, but and then soccer went down to 5. So a little bit of it was these various sports competing for the kids' interest at an early age. And now I think they're playing at like age 4 and 5.
Right. They start at 4. My kids both have tried
Yeah.
soccer at 4 and baseball at 4.
I know parents, I was that way too. You want to get your kid involved as quickly as possible. But
I guess they call it T-ball, at that, right?
Right. But I do worry sometimes if we don't have too many organized sports at too young of an age.
So, Jon, you've been coaching so long. What do you enjoy most about coaching?
I think just being around sports. I enjoy the excitement, the passion of it, the adrenaline. There's so few other areas in life where you get the highs and the lows. You see people jumping around in excitement or the disappointment and defeat. So it's more than the hitting the ball or the shooting of the basket. I think what I've always enjoyed most is the raw emotion that's involved in sports.
So people shouting out and out of turn and pointing at the ref.
Just for instance, you could see it at the professional level, and you can see it with 9-year-old kids. People that maybe anywhere else in life would not be friends and probably wouldn't be associated with each other. Maybe they have completely different backgrounds, but they're on the same sports team, and they have an exciting moment. Maybe a game-winning home run, or somebody hits a game-winning basket. I still remember in basketball, Vlade Divac from Yugoslavia. 35-year-old Yugoslavia, and Magic Johnson, 23-year-old African-American from Michigan. 2 completely different backgrounds, and they win the championship. And the 2 of them are hugging for like 30 seconds after winning the championship. And, where else in life do you get that kind of emotion? And the same thing even with 8, 9, 10-year-old kids.
Yes.
It's a great way of making friends. It's a great social thing too, but the excitement they get, and to see kids that normally might not be friends, might not connect on the sports field in that way. I've always enjoyed seeing that.
Yes, and it's such a short time, right? Within an hour or a game or 30 seconds.
Very short time, yeah.
Instead of maybe someone, your neighbor for 20 years and you never hug your neighbor.
I know, and I actually did a column on this, but I know when I drafted teams as a coach in Glenview, I would purposely pick kids that were not friends of my sons. So we would get to meet not only different kids, but we get to meet their mom and dad. And it was a great way of meeting different families, and you become friends. Some of them, lifetime friendships with them just because you were on that same sports team. So I always enjoyed, I guess, second to the emotion would be the social aspect of sports. It's so much fun.
That's a great point. Thank you, Jon. We'll look forward to your next column.
I appreciate your having me on. And again, the book is called Stuff People Might Want to Know from Someone Who Really Shouldn't Be Writing a Book. Don't check for spelling in the book, please. And it's available at Amazon.com or the Book Mart in Glenview, the Book Bin in Northbrook, and hopefully some other places in the very near future.
All right, and thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.